We had to learn ourselves, and furthermore, we had to teach the despairing man that it did not really matter what we expected from life, but rather what life expected from us. Viktor Frankl on life in the concentration camps. Detaching from people and situations is one of the hardest things we ever have to do in life. When I was 15 to about the age 21, I was struggling with a toxic family member. This person used to always call me a failure and would always say that everyone should give up on me in life. I couldn't just leave the house and get away because I had to live with them. The best thing I could do was take control of my internal mind because I had very little control over the outside. During that time, I read over 100 books on emotional intelligence, psychology, and stoicism because I was sick of feeling constantly angry and overcome by my emotions. I summarized a lot of these books for my own personal use, and after all of that time and research, I have put them into 5 simple stoicism lessons for you. Maybe you feel stuck in a toxic relationship, but living is difficult. Maybe you feel that life is meaningless. Maybe you're in a bad job where you don't see a future for yourself. Maybe you're trying to get emotionally detached from a friend or a person that you once loved. Or it could just be a toxic family, like in my situation. In this video, we will learn how to stop struggling with emotional attachments that cause us pain, like clinging to a toxic relationship or becoming overly upset by other people's opinions. We will learn how to overcome the instability, sadness, and anxiety that comes from change and loss. We will also learn how to stop feeling overwhelmed and powerless when faced with stressful situations that are beyond our control and then lead to anxiety, stress, and a sense of defeat. And finally, we will learn how to move forward in life when everything feels hopeless and meaningless. The first point is that life is difficult. I want to bring to your attention that the average doctor spends 9 to 15 years in school. The average therapist who has to help us through our own problems takes about 8 to 13 years in university to get their license. And the average Olympic athlete that wins a gold medal has to train 4 hours a day for 4 consecutive years in order to win a gold medal. Remember that we are fighting the great conquest of life. Many of us want anxious-free, stress-free, and powerful minds. We have to understand that life is not a dainty business. We have started on a long journey and we are bound to slip, collide with others, fall, and become weary of life and cry out, "Oh my God, this is too hard." So if we want a powerful and peaceful mind, we have to remember that we're aiming for something that very few people ever attain. We have to sincerely ask ourselves, have I worked as hard on myself as a lawyer or a doctor or engineer works to attain their knowledge? And for most of us, the answer is no. Most of the time, we are amateurs at the game of life. So we have to be patient with ourselves. The Stoics knew this and used to always tell their students that since you're aiming for such great things, you have to remember that you'll exert no small effort to attain them, and that you'll have to renounce some things altogether while postponing others for the present. The second point is the Stoicism discipline of assent. Always put the question voluntarily to yourself. Am I tormented without sufficient reason, or am I morose, and do I convert what is not an evil into what is an evil? Since we're amateurs at the game of life, that means that we mostly look at life through the wrong lenses. The Stoics teach that it is not things themselves that disturb people, but the judgments that people form about those things. For everything in life, our emotions or judgments come in these 3 stages. The first is sensations. Let's suppose say that you're at a family gathering and a particular family member criticizes your career choices very loudly. At this moment, your senses, your eyes, your ears, and everything around is going to pick up on the words spoken, the tone of the voice, and the reactions of the other people around you. This is raw data. The second stage is Phantasia, or the impression. So instantly, Your mind might interpret these criticisms as hurtful personal attacks. This automatic impression might lead to feelings of anger, inadequacy, or sadness. You may perceive this family member as threatening your self-esteem and happiness. This impression is your mind's immediate interpretation of the raw sensational data. Past experiences, your self-image, and probably deep-seated feelings relating to your family dynamics all have an impact on this automatic impression. Now, those first two stages are normally automatic and are not within our power. The third part, which is called Dianoia or judgment, is where you get your power. So when these impressions reach our minds, this is where you decide whether to accept your initial impression or reject it if it's not valid. Before reacting, you have to pause and apply rational judgment. Does this person's opinion truly affect your career's value or its worth? You might remember that this person or family member often lashes out due to their own insecurities, and this reflects more about them than about you. In a video and when we're talking, these things sound very easy, but it takes several years of practice to get it right. This is what separates a fool from a wise man. The fool always accepts his first assessment of the situation. But this discipline of assent is not enough. And that leads us to the next point. The Stoics used to teach their students that it is important to keep in your mind that if you consider something which is inherently slavish to be free and something that is not your own to be your own, you will have many reasons to be unhappy. You will have a disturbed mind and you will criticize both human beings and gods. Our pains from life come from trying to control what is not in our power. In the previous part of the video, we saw that judging situations is the only thing that is in our power. One of the fundamental Stoicism doctrines is called the Dichotomy of Control. This doctrine teaches us that there are some things that are within our control and others that are not within our control. Later in the video, I'm going to share what to do about the things that are not within our control. But for now, let's focus on what is in our control. So let us use an example where you realize that you're in a relationship with a toxic partner, and this is negatively affecting your well-being. The first thing that you have to do is understand what you have direct control over. This includes your actions, decisions, attitude, and boundaries. For example, you can take action to communicate your concerns, to seek support, or you can actually leave the relationship. And you have to understand that your partner's behavior and the outcome of your attempts to address this toxicity is not in your control. The best you can do is take action, but also your partner's reactions to your concerns and whether they decide to seek help or change, and also how they perceive their relationship, these are not in your control. So if these are not in your control, what can we do about the things that are not within our power? The Stoics actually challenge us to love those things. Sometimes the best that we can do is to bear them grudgingly, but we should always be challenged to love them. The Stoics loved every event because they believed that the world was ordered by a rational and benevolent force, and that everything that happened in the world was for the best. So we always have to think, perhaps our destruction has been brought about only so that we may be raised to a better destiny. Oftentimes, a reverse has made room for a more prosperous fortune. Many structures have fallen only to rise to greater heights. Point number 4. Life ultimately means taking the responsibility to find the right answer to its problems and to fulfill the tasks that it constantly sets for each individual. Viktor Frankl. During COVID in 2019, a poll in Great Britain showed that 9 in 10 people between the ages of 16 and 29 reported that they felt that their lives were meaningless. After being in a tough situation for a very long time, we are likely to feel hopeless and we may feel like our lives are meaningless. But here's a little known thing that you can do about this. When tough situations befall us, we normally feel like staying in bed and we feel that life sucks. But the fact is that a lot of our apathy comes from us not receiving positive feedback in life. We normally feel motivated and have a lot of energy when we feel that we are moving forward in life. So positive feedback makes us feel good and gives us hope and motivation to keep going further. But how can we get positive feedback? It is through action. When we don't act, we normally get stuck in this loop. The loop is we don't take action, so we don't get positive feedback. And that leads us to feeling that we're not progressing in life. And that makes us feel sad and feel like our lives are meaningless. And that makes us not take action again. But sometimes taking action is not enough, because even when we take action, we may fall in this similar loop. So we could take action, then we fail in every attempt. And since we don't have positive feedback from that failure, then we're going to feel that we're not progressing, and that leads to sadness and a feeling of meaninglessness, which also makes us not take action, and then we fall back into the first loop. So I like to attack these loops in the sadness and meaningless area or the take action area. So in life, we either have to take action, or if we don't, let us refer to this quote from the prisoners in the concentration camps of World War. In a book by Viktor Frankl, who was one of the prisoners in the concentration camps, he noted that the prisoners who lost faith in the future were doomed, and they started to mentally and physically decay. There was this story of a prisoner who gave up hope when the war could not end. To the outside, it looked like he had died of typhus, but Viktor Frankl knew that this man had died of disappointment when his inner voice told him that the war would end by a certain date, and it actually did not end. Viktor Frankl understood that what the prisoners needed was to change their attitudes towards life. And he quoted it beautifully by saying, "We had to learn ourselves, and furthermore, we had to teach the despairing man that it did not really matter what we expected from life, but rather what life expected from us." So when we're in a tough situation, we should always ask ourselves, what does life expect from me? And finally, we have to try harder. We have to stop bullshitting ourselves and get serious about our lives. The Stoic philosopher Seneca used to always tell his students, do you know why we normal people do not have the power to attain these Stoic ideals? It is because we refuse to believe in our power. But there is also something else that plays a part. We are also in love with our vices. We normally prefer to uphold our vices and prefer to make excuses for them rather than shake them off. We humans have been endowed with sufficient strength by nature. If only we used this strength, if only we concentrated our powers and roused them all to help us, or at least not to hinder us. And he said that normally we use the excuse of inability. But if we really look deep into our hearts, the true reason is unwillingness. If you enjoyed this video, this will be the perfect video to watch next. Thank you.